Dr. Strangelove is a satirical comedy about the Cold War and the dangers of mutually assured destruction. During the Cold War, we had two superpowers with enough nukes to destroy the whole world over and over again. A lot of people credit mutually assured destruction with making the Cold War cold, because if one side started a war, the entire world would get destroyed because of the abundance of nukes on both sides. So theoretically, this prevented either side from wanting to escalate to the point of war. However, even by rational actors, mutually assured destruction had some flaws. For example, what if I tried to test and play chicken with the other side? Let's see who can get closest to a war without causing an actual war. Whoever has more courage to go to the brink will probably gain the most concessions from the other side. This is a concept called brinksmanship. A famous example of this was the Cuban Missile Crisis, where the world stood still. That moment was probably the closest we ever were to a hot nuclear war. Mutually assured destruction can also be susceptible to accidents. For example, what if there was an error in the detection of a launch and suddenly we're at a war because of some malfunction in machinery or a malfunction in someone's mind? A famous example of this was 1983. A Soviet satellite malfunction made it look like NATO was launching an attack. It took one brave Soviet commander disobeying orders to prevent a nuclear war from happening. And of course, the third thing that mutually assured destruction does not take into account, which is what Dr. Strangelove explores, is what if there's just someone crazy that wants to start a war? Spoiler, in the movie, the war is not averted, the world's destroyed, and it ends on a bleak note. However, there was an original ending that was very different. I found out about this when I read the Stanley Kubrick Archives. Stanley Kubrick Archives again. Kubrick originally included a scene in the film in which the war room personnel engage in a free-for-all with cream pies from the buffet table. Kubrick devoted 5 days to shooting this sequence. 5 days, guys. Ken Adam told Michel Simon it was a very brilliant sequence with a Helsa-poppin' kind of craziness. Undoubtedly, one of the most extraordinary pie battles ever filmed. The characters were hanging from chandeliers and throwing pies, which ended up covering the maps of the general staff. Shooting lasted a week, and the sequence ended with the President of the United States and the Soviet ambassador sitting on what was left of the pies and building pie castles like children on the beach. In shooting the pie fight, which involved 30 actors, many of them in military dress, the participants heaved 1,000 pies a day at each other. After watching this segment with an audience, Kubrick decided to delete it completely from the final print of the picture because it was too farcical and not consistent with the satiric tone of the rest of the film, he told me. This was a wise decision since the humor in Dr. Strangelove is mostly of the tongue-in-cheek variety, not slapstick. Anthony Harvey recalls that at one point in the pastry throwing scene, the president is hit with a pie. One of the generals says, "Our beloved president has been struck down in his prime." In the wake of the assassination of President JFK, that line would have proved unacceptable. But as things turned out, the whole scene was scuttled. It's funny because part of me feels like this ending could totally work. Every movie, unless it's like one of these super artsy movies where nothing really goes on, it builds up to something. And I feel like a pie fight would have been perfect. Yes, the humor was more tongue-in-cheek, but I really don't think a big pie fight shifts the tone too much. The original ending of the movie is just nukes going off. I mean, that is quite a shift in tone too, right? So why not have a pie fight? You guys let me know. Do you think a big pie fight, maybe the biggest pie fight ever filmed on screen, would have been perfect? I think it would have been perfect. Something else worth mentioning is staying true to the artist's vision. So if it is true that Stanley Kubrick removed the pie fight scene on his own accord, then we have to respect that as much as we would love to see it. There's something uniquely vulnerable in showing people your creativity. It's my hypothesis that creativity, creative expression is extremely right brain focused. And the right brain likes to think about the holistic, the whole. So even if the details are correct, if it doesn't fit the entire entity, the right brain will reject it. And I think that's what happened with the pie fight scene. So as much as we would appreciate the pie fight scene on its own, in the context of the movie, it just doesn't make sense, according to Kubrick. However, even just appreciating a pie fight scene on its own, I think a lot of us want to see it. But here I want to present to you guys a story. When I was in middle school, I spent a year or so doing some guohua, Chinese painting. One time I painted 2 paintings, and they weren't ready. They weren't good. My mom thought they were good, and she took them without my permission and gave them to other people. That was one of the most traumatizing experiences of my life. I'm still traumatized from it. I tell you guys this story as a way to potentially explain to you why Kubrick would never want to show this pie fight scene. He would not want people to see this scene that we all want to see, much like I never wanted anyone to see those paintings that I did not like and did not feel represented me. So with these stories in mind, do you understand what I'm trying to express? Thank you guys so much for watching this. We will have more Stanley Kubrick breakdowns, and in general, recommend movies that I can break down with you guys. Also, did you like how Stanley Kubrick called out that the US used Nazi scientists against the Soviets after World War II? Peter Sellers' Dr. Strangelove was played very perfectly.